Sophie Marks, welcome
Hi.
to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. This is, as always, really exciting. This is going to be a cool one. I think best place to start is kind of, I don't know how I got to know you, because I don't know, there's like this web forming of people who know one another. But I think, let me think about this. So John Hayes came on the podcast, I don't know, it was like 20s, late 20s or early episode like 30, 31, something like that. Mm-hmm. And he released, of course, By the Woods, and following the reworks. And I was like chatting with him. I was like, hey, man, it'd be really cool to maybe do some collaboration, something like that. And he's like, well, yeah, let's do it. But I was really interested in doing the track Reflect. And he's like, well, yes, but you got to listen because Sophie Marks is on it. So I found out about your music, which is amazing. I want to talk about it today.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, there's this whole little web growing of these of artists who know one another, and now I've gotten to meet you and learn about your music.
Definitely.
So super stoked. How did you get to know him? Start working with him with the music and such.
It's actually really funny because Instagram has been like the main source of how I've gotten to know all these people. And introduced me to my manager, Kyle. Yep. And then Kyle was the one who virtually introduced me to John, because John was looking for artists to work on his Rework album. Uh-huh. And so I've never officially met John in person.
Oh, yeah, because
which is crazy.
West Coast. He's like up in Minneapolis, right? I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're East Coast. Or I said West Coast. You're East Coast. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, and I just sort of started meeting people through Kyle, but only online. Mm-hmm. And John was interested because he knew that I was a Topline writer and, that I also wrote my own music. And he sent me Reflect as like sort of like a test trial before actually assigning something to me, and it fit perfectly. And that's how we got to know each other.
So it's pretty recent then, because that whole Reworks album is only, I don't know, people were working on that like few months ago.
Yeah. So pretty recent. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. It's beautiful. So I've been able to listen to all the masters because I made it in there, which I'm really stoked about.
We're doing the same track.
I know.
That's awesome.
I know. Yeah. It's so funny because I was like, as I mentioned, sifting through, and I was like, ooh, Reflect seems like something I could rework. And then, but yeah, I mean, I listened to your rendition and it's beautiful. I'm absolutely, yeah, I'm really stoked to have it out there. I'm really stoked for the release, which is about a month, like 3 weeks from now, something like that.
3 weeks from now, yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So, and there's a ton of talented people on there, and I mean, big shout out to Kyle because he was on for the last episode, and he's kind of piecing this whole thing together and helping. So it's really cool. How did you get introduced to Kyle then? So you've known him for some time, is that?
It's actually crazy. Kyle stepped into my life like at the perfect time. So I was getting ready to release my first album completely independently, and I had no idea about like playlisting or pitching it to people to write about, just having like an online presence with it. I was just, all about the idea of putting out music and not really thinking about what comes after. And I got featured like on a couple of Instagram music pages, and Kyle told me that like he would regularly go and like check out artists on these pages, and that he happened to find me. So he actually messaged me, and I had no idea who he was. I didn't know what he did or anything. All I knew is that he had some music out, some like solo piano stuff, because I checked him out on Spotify. So we started talking. He was like, I know you have an album coming out. Send me your stuff. Maybe we could work together. Maybe I can help you with some playlisting things. So I sent him my album, and he was like, okay, I normally do not work in this style of music, but like, I think you have such great potential, and hopefully we can work more together on other music. And I don't know, we just started talking more and more. I went to New York a couple of times after that to do some shows and some promo and stuff like that. And we just sort of became really good friends, and he was like, why don't I manage you?
Yeah.
So, That's how it happened.
I love it. Yeah, it's like this weird
awesome.
Instagram world that's happening where people, I mean,
Yeah.
people can meet, you and I can start talking. It's so strange in that sense, but it's awesome.
It is.
I love it.
I love it too.
Yeah.
I love it too. It's a really useful tool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that I talk about it often. I think a lot of people will, I don't know. It's funny because so many people are using Instagram all the time, but everyone likes to hate on it. But you forget about these amazing, capabilities that come with it. Because now this kind of thing happens, and really everyone who I've been able to speak with for the podcast has happened, or I've been able to just because of Instagram.
Right. Yeah. It's awesome.
It's so cool
if you know how to use it the right way.
Yeah,
it's a good tool.
Totally. Yeah, because it can get really captivating. I can find myself. I don't know if you have an iPhone, but I get like weekly updates now of how often I'm using my phone. And it'll be like, oh, you're up a percentage, and it'll be like up 20%. And it's like daily use of 7 hours or something ridiculous. I'm like, I'm on my phone all the fucking time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah.
I try not to be.
I try
to limit it.
Yeah, I'm trying to. And I noticed with this thing, it's really interesting because doing these episodes is awesome. I love doing the episodes, but I'll find myself after getting really kind of caught up in like, how are episodes doing and watching metrics. And it's just like, I need to stop that. And just because I get a lot of anxiety, and then it's like, the best is just having the conversation. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's funny around because this whole world is so interesting because we all want to share something, whether it's music or whatever it is. And you want to have this artistic, platform to share your music or share your art or whatever it is. But then you just have to be so careful. But I mean, it's really cool to be able to do it, to be able to have conversations like this. So I guess it just comes with the territory a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then for that, no one's heard it yet because the tracks for the reworks come out in a few weeks. But what has been your process then of, it could be that track, it could just be in general, but I know that you have this focus on jazz. I've listened to your music, I read your bio, and it kind of started with classical music, morphed into jazz a little bit. And jazz, and jazz is so experimental, and like improvisation is a huge factor of jazz. So what's that creative process like when you're working on new music? What's that like?
Oh my gosh. It's actually been kind of crazy because it's gone way further than jazz.
Uh-huh.
I started out in classical and then moved towards jazz beginning of college, end of high school, around that time. And then I majored in songwriting at Berkeley. And that just took me to so many other genres and more contemporary styles. And so, yeah, there's always that foundation of jazz and classical instilled in me because that's where I came from.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I try because I get like a lot of different artists and producers writing to me online now because of how much I do on Instagram to Toplining. And it's completely different genres, completely different styles from completely different places all over the world. And I take that as a learning tool and kind of a blessing too, because it's not like you get to write in that style every single day,
right.
You're stepping out of your comfort zone, you're stepping out of your box. But I enjoy that because it only makes me more well-versed in writing.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I've come to work with, like, EDM artists and producers, and even, like, I'm working on a jazz project right now with Stan Forby and Mike Casey. I can't tell you, like, the name or anything, but that's what's going on. And then, like, I've worked with rappers, I've worked with, it's a good mix of everything.
Yeah.
And it's not like I was taught all these different genres, but I think the foundation of like classical and jazz have definitely helped me emerge into, going into other styles. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like you don't really need a handbook of like, this is what you have to do for this. You just sort of go into it and you put yourself into it as well. And it becomes something that ends up working,
Oh, then would you say that studying songwriting, was that like kind of the foundation to learn maybe, I don't know, at kind of like an educational level, that foundation. And then it's really this immersion of working with different artists and having that experience that has allowed really kind of the next step. You can only learn, maybe I'm kind of getting at, like, you can only learn so much from like an education. You kind of, I think what you're expressing is like you immerse yourself in these different projects and what
you
comes,
learn things on your own.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the songwriting thing definitely helped. And it was more, when I was in school, it was more lyric writing than anything else. We learned theory, which, like anything else, you can apply that in many different ways. It's just music theory. But when it came to lyric writing, it's storytelling and kind of portraying an artist's vision through, words.
Yeah.
And that definitely helped a lot. And it's, not every style is written the same way. So you have to, become a different character in every situation.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Because I would think, that makes perfect sense. If you're going from something like an EDM track to, working with a rap artist, let's say. That's night and day, Yeah.
So, and then, like, people want to tell different stories. Yeah. People want to convey different messages. And it's a whole huge thing. That you sort of have to find your way through.
Yeah. Oh, I'd imagine. Do you find that then I would imagine if I were to put myself there, kind of jumping between different styles, working with different artists, there would be I'd almost feel like some internal pressure on myself because I'm like moving from one thing to another. Do you find that kind of shift and almost that, like, hey, this project has to get done at this time is like really good for you creatively? You're like, okay, I gotta jump in, gotta get it done.
That's a good question. Sometimes it is. Other times, I don't know, your brain just stops working. And you have to, crash and burn a couple times. But I find that I work really well on a time crunch. Mm-hmm. I think it brings out more in me than I think that I have,
Yeah, I would imagine, you get such interesting feedback switching between projects because you can see like, okay, hey, here was a new one where it was a new style of music maybe, or maybe, just kind of a curveball that I wasn't even thinking about doing. There was this time limitation. Then you get to see what comes from it, and you can kind of reflect on the project after the fact and see like, hey, actually this, and this really worked well for me. And this was something that, I don't know. I just imagine having that kind of transition in so many different things would allow for such cool feedback.
Definitely. And also it depends on whatever the person that you're working with is giving you. So like sometimes you'll just get a track and like they're like, do whatever you want, name the song yourself. Wow. Like, and then other times you'll have someone come in and say like, I want this to be the storyline, specifically like implement this word into the verse or into the chorus, and like, or like, this is the song title, write something around that. And that like in itself, sometimes it's limiting because it's like, oh my God, how am I going to write about, I don't know, this thing. Right. But other times it's really helpful because it's, a guideline to something that I can work with,
Yeah, that's really cool. So this is all kind of under the umbrella of Toplining. How does this differentiate from, because I'm not familiar with the term, is this similar in the sense to ghost producing where you're behind everything and you're writing the lyrics, you're writing the melody, and you're kind of just staying behind the curtain? Or Toplining, does that mean you're writing everything out and then you're also part of, like, your name's there, you're just kind of co-releasing with that artist?
Well, yeah, so it depends. It could be both. So Toplining, essentially, it's just writing lyrics and melody to a track. Okay. So, like, normally it's a producer who will give me the song. And for the most part, it's been, they want me to be the vocalist as well, so I'll be featured in the track. But sometimes I'll get called to do either, like, background harmonies or a melody and lyric line for another artist. So it just depends, but it's all like under the same umbrella of top-line writing. Yeah.
Got it. God, that's also, or always, excuse me, and something that's been so fascinating to me, because I was always under the impression that to be in be in the world of being, I've been really fascinated with ghost producing. So to be in that world, a person has to be, you know, in LA working with different producers and chatting with Philip G. Anderson, who's done a lot of work on television, worked with different movies. I mean, he's in Nashville, I believe now. I think it's Nashville. And he was in LA for some time, but he's mentioning like, no, that's completely changed. It comes through these connections that you make through a lot of times social media, where it no longer has to be you're in one location. So you would say starting out then, if someone's interested in this, it really just ends up being kind of honing your craft and then meeting these people. There's no, I mean, you are close to New York, so I'm sure that really helps, but there's no dependency on location saying you have to be in, say, one place anymore.
No, I mean, most, if not all of the projects that I've worked on so far have been like remotely. I'll just, you know, technology is so cool.
Yeah.
Like you can just, they'll send you the track, you can put it into whatever software you use. For me, it's Logic, and just record over it, write over it yourself, and then send back stems. And it's so easy. It's just completely through email. Man,
that it's so, it's so cool. I love that stuff. I love
really
it.
Is.
Yeah. Cause again, I mean, it makes me think of things like the Reworks project that's coming out. It's like, you just get something from Kyle and he's like, hey, here are all the masters. It's like, there's all these different people, you know, and it's all incredible music and everyone's remote. I mean, there's people, I think around the world, right? Maybe so it is such a, I don't know. I just feel like I'm in such a fortunate time to be able to talk about this stuff, and then to be able to be part of this where, people are passing around music, passing around ideas. It's all remote. I would imagine that it kind of brings down the barriers for people who are, you know, maybe in another part of the world where it's, say, 10 years ago, you had to be somewhere specifically. Now you can be anywhere. As long as you're good, that's the barrier for entry.
Very convenient too.
Yeah. Very, very convenient. Yeah.
No spending money on plane tickets, no traveling, none of that.
Yep.
It's very nice.
Yeah. That's so cool. So then, I mean, I know this is coming out here in like a month, but then what's going on recently? I always say like, hey, what's going on for 2019? But we're like halfway through the year. So it's like, what's been happening this year? And
I recently released a single of mine. It's called So Dear. And that came out like early May. Yeah. So that was like my first project of 2019, and I worked on that with Kyle. That was the first thing that we released together under like his management. And for right now, I'm working with Joshua Jacobson. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a friend of mine and Kyle's, and he's a producer and a pianist. He also sings. He does everything. But he's helping my friend Tega and I produce like a duo EP.
Oh, cool.
So we wrote 4 songs together. The name of it is going to be Tulips. And we're going to try to release it maybe in the fall or like early winter. But yeah, that's my next project. And then I've also just been writing a bunch of different things for... Kyle and I haven't really decided yet. Kyle is thinking like a series of EPs. I'm thinking like another album, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Either or.
Either one, Yeah, it's funny because I think I see a lot of people now going this route where it's like a series of EPs. So some artists I love, I mean, they'll release like 2-3 tracks on an EP, and then 2 months later it's another 2-3 tracks, and it's just this churning, and they're always kind of in your mind, you know, you're thinking like, oh, hey, here's another release.
It's smart.
It's interesting. But then I guess there's to think about, I mean, there's probably some creative limitations there, because then you're kind of boxed into a few tracks, whereas like with an album you can really, because one thing I was going to mention is your 2018 release, the full album. It's so interesting because it will go between different styles. Like you'll have some tracks that are more you know, jazz influence, but then more acoustic, ambient. I don't know how to quite put with finding my way. Yeah.
And that was that album had a concept, and it was like a heartbreak album. But it did sort of change from song to song. A lot of people said And it was good feedback, like to hear from, what other people heard, that the tracks were very different, but they did sort of mesh well together because it was all sort of the same message.
Right.
But I like that. I like adding like a little bit of difference into something.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the other thing. If we do like go through with an album rather than an EP is so easy because you can get a couple songs together and really like make them one idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if we, go through with another album right away, I would say like we definitely need to solidify like a common theme and a common message and like make something really cool, but like leave it under one specific topic.
Yeah.
Just so it's not like super confusing. So that's the thing that we need to work on, that will like set aside a series of EPs versus an album.
Right. Yeah. It is interesting because I like it. I like the fact that as you go through the album, you're right. I mean, the style of each track can be a bit different, but as a holistic view, when you listen to the album, it fits. And I really like that. And I think a lot of people, I've noticed in electronic music especially, people will look to say like, oh, I found my sound, and then you kind of make iterations to your sound. But I don't know. I when I look at these artists who I love, who are, maybe have been doing it for a career, they have a sound, but it comes through different genres of tracks. You know what I'm saying? So It's like, I think that's when something can be so powerful, is like, this is that unique sound, but it's applied in so many different manners.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I also think, just the way that you sound yourself.
Right.
That should be your unique sound, and then like you can work around it however you want, or yeah,
totally,
however you feel,
especially for singing, because I mean, people immediately are going to say, okay, this is Sophie.
Right.
I know the sound, I know her voice.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When did you... sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
No, I was just gonna say it is important to sort of hone in on that and like keep exploring what that sound is, what you really enjoy, rather than like what you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and that it's cool you bring that up, because I've had that conversation with a lot of people on the podcast, where when you find that thing that is yours and you really enjoy making this specific sound, and it feels like it's coming from a really kind of, I don't know, something specific to yourself that's coming through the music, that's when the most enjoyment or fulfillment comes from the music, when it's like, this is me coming through this song, versus, I don't know, I don't even know what the other would be, but it's finding that specific sound that's you, it's your voice, and then the music that comes through is probably the most enjoyable. Yeah.
Agreed.
yeah no, it's I don't know, it's always so interesting to hear about. So when did this all start for you? I mean, I read that you had this foundation in classical music, and as we were chatting about it, kind of transformed into this interest in jazz, and then singing and songwriting as at the educational level in college. But when did you know that, hey, music is something that's really interesting to me, this is what I want to do with my life? Or when did that all start?
Well, I always knew. And that's like so cheesy, like, oh, I always knew, but like seriously, I really did.
Yeah.
When I was 8 years old, I joined choir in elementary school, and I remember like sitting after school with my choir teacher, and she would show me like adult choirs, like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and they were singing like some classical piece, and I was just so moved by the harmonies, like I would sit there and cry, and I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
And my teacher said like, wow, you have very mature taste,
Yeah.
Like a lot of people think this is boring, and like especially people your age. And so after that, like I knew that I just loved music, and I wasn't sure if it was like specifically classical, but that was the only thing that was available to me at the time, so that's what I practiced in. And then I went on to go to art schools, both middle school and high school. There were 2 art schools in my area, so I was lucky enough to attend the both of them. And yeah, it was just classical programs. And then in my high school, the jazz band would come and select singers. And at one point there was like a college scout, like just like listening to people. So I decided to go to the masterclass, the jazz masterclass that they were having. And that's when I first like got involved. And I don't know, like it wasn't my favorite thing. And I wasn't like, wow, I was meant to do jazz, but it was like, okay, something other than classical. This is cool. Like, I want to explore it. And then I heard, through the jazz program at my high school, I heard about Berklee. And I decided to audition for their summer program. Mm-hmm. And I went in, like, as a jazz vocalist, but I came out, like, because they had songwriting workshops for high schoolers, and I was like, oh my god, there's, like, a whole other world of stuff out there, you know? Like, there's so much to work with. And, so that was my junior year that I attended the summer program at Berklee. And after that, I was like, okay, I have to go back and audition and get into that songwriting program. And I did. Yeah. And yeah, that's just how, like, I evolved into liking so many different styles of music and being so open to listening and writing and singing in all different styles.
Yeah, that I like the fact that you have, as you mentioned, been open to so many different styles, because that's always, I think, what allows for the most unique music to, I guess, if you're influenced by so many different genres and so many different styles, then what comes out is so unique, you know? Mm-hmm. I love that because you can hear it, of course, in the albums, because there's lots of different genres played through the tracks. Yeah. And I'm assuming that you're pulling on lots of different artists that have inspired you throughout the years in different genres. So it's really, really cool. Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. Who does most of the music work? Because I see on your Instagram, you will sing, but you're also playing keyboard. So you have, So are you doing a lot of the accompaniment for the tracks when you know, like, you're writing out the chords, you're like, okay, I know it's going to go this direction, or what's that like?
And are you speaking, like, specifically on Instagram for the covers, or like for my album, or?
Either. I mean, well, let's, like, maybe for the album, but I guess both.
Okay. For the album, actually, it was a friend of mine. His name's Oscar Brown. And we co-wrote some of the songs together on the album, and he was the one who sort of pushed me to make it and, like, to release an album. And because I had never released any music at all, and I was like, wow, an album, really? Not a single. So we got together and we worked on that, but he was very production heavy. Like, he did all of the production work. He did vocal production, instrumentals, all of that. And I trusted him completely because he's incredible. But for me, it was like, okay, this is really cool. I love the sound of this album, but, like, it wasn't completely me, you know, it wasn't completely who I was. But again, it's like, it's good to know, because it's good to explore different sounds before you reach your own. And so, yeah, after that, I started doing covers and stuff on Instagram, and that's how I grew a following. And I just spent, like, a couple of weeks going through Logic, because that's the software that I have. And just I have, like, a little Akai mini keyboard. Yeah. And I realized that, like, I could do everything on that. Like, and I play keys, so it was just, like, natural for me to do everything on there. But, yeah, I just, like, explored Logic and, like, learned to sort of produce. And then, like, before I knew it, people were like, oh my god, you're so good. Would you produce this for me? Would you produce this for me?
Oh, that's awesome.
So, like, yeah, it's kind of turned into, like, I don't know, like, I still don't call myself a producer, because that's just so weird. I'm a songwriter. But people are like, yeah, you're a producer. You do your little tracks and stuff, but I don't know.
That's cool. I don't know. Well, I think...
So nothing's impossible.
No, but I think that's the best... I mean, that's the best kind of path into this. I really do believe that. Like, if you're just doing it for it's almost like you're approaching those tracks like from this production point of view, almost for fun, for something for yourself, just to have music out there that you're putting on Instagram. But when people come to you and they're like, hey, will you produce for me? That's a really good sign. That really means something. I mean, because the opposite is someone who is, really, really working hard, blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of no after no after no after no. I mean, that can be a sign. It's like, okay, I need to kind of step up my game or something to reapproach this in a different manner. But the fact that people are coming to you right off the bat and saying, hey, let's work together. Can you produce blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's really cool.
It's crazy. It really is. Like, I didn't expect it at all, because I like produce stuff for myself, like not for anyone else. Mm-hmm. It's things that I do like in my room when I'm bored or like when I'm being a nerd. But I never expected it to like grow like bigger and bigger, and for myself to get better and better. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that oftentimes when you go back and you listen to, so I'm reading a book from Anthony Kiedis, Scar Tissue, right now, the lead singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I love those stories, because he didn't go into it being with the mindset that, oh, I'm going to be a rock star, I'm going to He just got thrown in the band. He's like, I guess I'll sing, because he was just, hanging around those guys. They were childhood friends. And so it's just natural. It happens naturally. And then this really unique voice comes through, because it's not curated and there's not, all this emphasis to have a certain sound. It's like really, really raw and real. And I think that, my guess is what's happening is like, you're just doing this for you. You're making tracks, you're having fun, and it's coming through and it's very unique and it's refreshing. It's new, and people are seeing that and be like, oh, boom, this is cool. Do you want to work together? Blah, 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the best way to have it happen, man. That's awesome.
It really is. It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for those out there starting this kind of trek, I mean, what would you kind of, for new producers out there, what are some things that you've learned along the way? Producers, songwriters, musicians, creatives in general. I mean, from your path, what would you recommend as some things just to like, seeing it from start to finish now, or not finish, but from start to where you are today? What could you kind of recommend for people out there just to, I don't know, if they're kind of struggling, they're like, I'm starting, I don't know what the hell to do.
Oh yeah. I was in that position at one point in my life. And I didn't write for 2 years. I was depressed, and I just like finished up school and like did whatever I could to leave so I could focus on music. And I think the best advice is to not stand in your own way. Like, just don't limit yourself, and don't say that you can't do anything because you don't see yourself in that position right away. Like, it's possible. It comes with practice, just like anything else. But like, if you really put your mind to it and work hard and manifest it too, like, you have to believe in yourself. Yep. It's going to work out. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you work hard and if you don't sit on your ass, like, there's not much that can go wrong if you really, really, really put an effort into it, and if you really try hard. And also, like, just be more involved with people. Like, that's something that I learned was huge for me. Just step out of your shell, talk to as many people as possible, make friends, especially music friends. Like, that's such an important thing, because everyone's out there trying to do the same thing as you, and they can help you, and you can help them in different ways. So yeah, just building communication and strong relationships with people, and not viewing them as your competitors, but more so your family, Yeah. I love that, because I think a couple things you touched on. I mean, the notion of believing in yourself and thinking about, okay, I'm here today, but I want to get here. And it sounds almost crazy that I want to do this, but this is something I really, really want to do. You kind of have to have this goal that almost seems crazy, and then to work really hard on it and believe in yourself. I really feel deeply that if a person is honest with themselves, they're hardworking, they're dedicated to it, when they get knocked down, they get back up, they keep working, it somehow works out. A path will open up. Something's going to happen, and that conversation has come up time and time again on this podcast. And I love it, because
it gives people from an outside perspective the ability to see like, hey, maybe there's some people listening that are 10 or 20 steps behind you, but they're hearing, hey, you're having the same internal conversations and you're doing the same thing. You're just working at it. You believe in yourself. You're working at it. You're taking those steps. And I love those conversations. I do believe in that. I believe in that manifestation, as long as there's that piece with it too, that hard work. I mean, that's there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, think of it this way. Like, if you refuse to do anything, then you definitely know that nothing's going to work out.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose if you just go for it, like, as much as you can,
you
know?
Yep. And I believe that it's those people that had a hobby and they tried it and then they kind of gave up. Those are the people out there saying, oh, it can't be done. You just can't do it. You can't do it. But it's the people that just never stop. It's just, that's it. That's their life. They just do it.
That's the secret. You can't stop.
Yeah.
You can't stop.
It'll work out, you know?
Yeah, it will.
In some strange way, like something will doors will open. It might not be exactly where you thought you were going to be 10 years before, whatever, but it's going to be this weird thing that you're going to look back at.
It'll put you in the right place.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. And I, again, as well, just can't emphasize enough, just as you mentioned, meeting people, giving, and that, and not in a, it's always funny to bring that up because I talk about it and giving to other people in this community and helping the best you can, not in the sense that, like, oh, I want to get something out of this, because everyone sees through that right away. You know, it's never that, but it's really trying to make friends with people, give, and that's like, you end up meeting the right people. You meet the people that are doing that same thing, and you just have this happy collaborative thing that just boom moves in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that kind of circles back to Kyle. I was so, like, reluctant to trust him because there are, as sad as it is, like, people are cold in this industry and people are sneaky. Mm-hmm. But he was the first person that ever, like, truly wanted to invest in me without wanting anything in return. Yeah. He was like, no, I love your sound. Like, I love you as a person. You're someone that I'm passionate about. And it's like, wow, that's such a breath of fresh air for, you know, people to be passionate about each other without wanting anything in return. Yeah. You know, that's the way it should be, because it builds relationships. And then in one way or another, the universe is going to help everyone out, you know? Yep. If you're a good person, it comes back to you.
I totally believe that. Yeah. And I mean, it's a great example, because just chatting with him last week, you just get that sense that he was always giving something. He's like starting this label, and he's not trying to make any money. He's just like, hey, we have to make some money to cover vinyls and whatever. Right. I mean, that's it. Everything else is like, he wants artists to get paid. He's trying to make this as genuine and as real as possible about the music. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that it just moves forward. I don't know how else to explain it. It moves forward.
I really hope it changes the industry.
Yeah.
And I think it will. Like, if more people like us have these conversations, slowly it will. Yeah. So. Yeah. I love it. I really do. And it is funny, because I've had times in my life where I've been working super hard on things, and it's just almost like it's not going to happen. Like, for whatever reason, it's like the universe is telling me, it's like, don't, just stop trying this path, you know, stop. and then you'll find yourself on other paths, and you're working really hard, and you're, as you mentioned, like, putting good energy out, you're giving, and then just things start happening, things start opening, and it's like, okay, it's almost the universe telling you, like, this is right. Just keep going, do this, keep working, and things are going to go in the right direction. So it's really cool. And I love, almost as much as how cool it's been about just to talk about music, how fascinating it is to see this thing happen. Because I think that this is an interesting time with social media, where everyone's starting to talk more, everyone's starting to know each other a little bit more. There's no more, you know, geographical barriers. Everyone's chatting, everyone's releasing music together, and it's becoming such a community. It's so cool. Mm-hmm. I love it. I really do.
Yeah. It's just, it's awesome. And you just get access to such amazing stuff, because someone can be searching around Instagram, whatever, in their newsfeed, and they come across something totally random that they may not have, maybe they're musicians and they stumble across one of your posts where it's like you're singing and then you're playing your Akai and it's like this awesome, and then you're doing the like background vocals that are layered on top of it, and it's just like, oh, this is fucking cool. And then suddenly, boom, you guys are chatting or whatever, and it becomes something else. Yeah
Truly. And that's exactly the scenario.
Yeah.
And it's really, really cool how, you know, you can connect with people in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's awesome, and it makes me think about like where this whole thing is going to go. And I wonder. I mean, I think that record labels, for one, are moving more towards this. It seems like record labels like Sonder House, and I know one that's in this electronic music world, immersive, that are totally focused on the artist. I think you see them getting more traction, and the other model of just abusing artists and just trying to drain artists for every cent is changing, and it's becoming this you know, place where people can release music on their own. People can release labels on these like niche or release music on these niche labels.
Mm-hmm.
It's
well, I think artists are getting smarter, and they're becoming good business people too, rather than just the artist. And you know, I think it's important to be knowledgeable of every area in the industry, not just I'm a performer, everyone else can take care of this for me. You know, that way you're not screwed into things and you're not working with the wrong people with the wrong intentions. And I feel like we should all educate ourselves a little bit more on that, and then we'll all be, you know, okay, and start moving away from those crappy labels.
Totally. And you learn along this path that there is, I mean, there's a lot of different factors to this whole thing. I mean, the music is first and foremost the most important, but then you have to have the business sense. You also have to have the marketing sense too, because that's right there with it. I mean, you have to understand things like Spotify playlisting, which I don't know enough about. You know, I need to learn. I need to learn more about. You know, so because a person can release music, and then there's so much stuff out there. There's so much. You know, you have to be strategic and understand the playing field, or it's going to get lost in the noise. So I think being able to team up with Kyle and know Kyle is amazing, because his story was so interesting. I mean, he has pretty much spent a lifetime understanding the business behind music, you know, and it's like since 16, and he could just rattle off ideas. Yeah,
it's crazy. I don't know how he got gigs like that so young, but like, it's really cool because he's our age, and he's like walking around like a seasoned manager. And it's awesome, and it's great to have someone like that on your side.
Totally. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like you couldn't have been luckier, because you're right. He has the experience, the expertise, but just his head's in the right place, and it's all for the right reasons. It's cool. Yeah. I'm super stoked. I'm stoked to see everything that comes in the future. I'm stoked to have this Reworks release out. I think it's like June 14th, something like that. 15th?
June 14th. That's the release date. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Totally. I'm super excited.
Yeah.